Right, joining us for more on India-Brazil relations is Professor Vardhan Pant. He is Vice President of the Observer Research Foundation. The ORF is a privately held think tank headquartered in New Delhi. Professor Pant, welcome to DD India News Hour. Your first thoughts on the optics and outcomes from the India-Brazil talks. Do you think the bilateral ties have matured and come of age?
I think so, Ramesh. I think for a long time, India and Brazil were seen as like-minded countries, but very distant, not really been able to turn their potential into anything concrete. And I think now what we are witnessing is a maturing of that relationship because of, in particular, in light of the circumstances that I think both India and Brazil find themselves in, but also because India is more forthcoming now in ensuring that the leverage that it has in the global economy today gets tapped, gets fructified into concrete partnerships. And Brazil, because of the environment that it is facing in the neighborhood, particularly with the US, relationship under the Trump administration, trying to find newer partners and trying to look at India through a new lens. So I think it's a convergence that is quite needed, and that was in fact, frankly, long in the making. But now that we are here, it's good to see how the two sides are now making it multifaceted, more substantive, more outcome-oriented.
Professor, since you referred to the US, how does Trump's national security strategy with respect to the Western Hemisphere impinge or cramp Brazil's and other Latin American countries' foreign and security policies?
I think it harks back to the age of Monroe Doctrine. Of course, we now call it Monroe Doctrine, but it harks back to that age where America wanted to have very tight control over the Western Hemisphere, and therefore in that spirit, it restricts the strategic autonomy available to countries in the region. And I think for Brazil, that has long prided itself on being a very independent actor. Particularly, if you see, President Lula's approach to global politics, to U.S. relations, he had always stood firm against protecting and preserving that strategic autonomy. I think this is certainly a moment of great consternation, a moment where the Western Hemisphere and countries like Brazil have to recalibrate their ties, rethink their relations with the U.S. and craft their relationship with the rest of the world. And I think, therefore, this outreach to India is very important and very timely and substantive, because I think what Mr. Lula is trying to send out a message that America may try to do, or Trump administration may want to do what it wants to do in the Western Hemisphere, but countries like Brazil that are huge countries, that are significant countries, that are countries with great leverage in the global south, have alternatives, have options and choices that they will not hesitate from taking forward. And I think in the India-Brazil engagement that has moved significantly up in the ladder, this signifies that commitment to preserving that element of a strategic autonomy in Brazilian foreign policy as the Trump administration tries to clamp down even more on the Western Hemisphere.
Professor Pant, you referred to the perception of Latin America being a distant land. In a sense, distance is a handicap when it comes to India's ties with Latin America. But the same is not true for North America, be it the US or Canada. So what can be done to increase engagement with Latin America in general and Brazil in particular, in terms of maybe trade, people-to-people ties, connectivity maybe?
I think at a number of levels, the two nations have to work towards each other. And I think it starts from being aware of each other's potential.
Right.
And I think in this day and age, certainly when diversification is becoming such an important element of foreign policies of countries, both for Brazil and for India, it is important that we leverage each other in trade policy, in economic policy. Critical minerals, for example, is a big topic of conversation between India and Brazil and India and Latin America. And I think that element where we need to tap into the reservoir of resources that both sides have. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. Brazil, which has enormous potential when it comes to critical resources, I think becomes a partnership that in some ways natural in today's environment. So I think first thing is that we need to be aware of each other's potential.
Indeed.
I don't think we are at the moment. So therefore, our people-to-people ties also lag behind. Not many academic institutions engage with each other. Not many, you don't have scholar exchange programs. You don't have student exchange programs. You don't have that awareness of how important Brazil is in certain sectors in India. And in Brazil, likewise, they don't have an awareness of how critically important India has become in the global economic architecture. So I think it starts from there, and
Right.
and kind of high-profile visits do a lot to make people aware of how important the two nations are and how they should be leveraged. So information and I think trade much more needs to be done than we are talking about, and I think this visit certainly sets the agenda very categorically in that regard.
Absolutely. And talking of tapping into the full potential of the bilateral ties, Professor Pant, both countries, India and Brazil, swear by multilateralism. They are both members of the Global South, of BRICS, of IPSA, of the G4 in particular, which is pushing for UN reform. So is there scope for doing more on the multilateral front by these two countries?
Absolutely. I think reform multilateralism that India has been pushing forth is certainly a requirement for both India and Brazil. The institutional architecture, the multilateral architecture is crumbling, and both Brazil and India have been strong votaries of multilateralism. But now that it is not working, we simply can't continue to bemoan the fact that it is not working. What needs to be done is to create newer platforms. And what you mentioned, we need to revive and we need to make alive the possibilities that exist in platforms like BRICS, IPSA, G20, because these are the alternatives that we have to the present day status at the UN, for example, and the UN-led international institutional framework. So I think certainly both countries with similar worldviews on Global South, and as India led G20, it passed the baton on to Brazil, and Brazil had taken that initiative forward. So I think both India and Brazil are convergent in that regard, that we want to bring Global South to the global development agenda, to global governance agenda. And I think there that leadership is very important. And I think IPSA also needs to be given greater thought, even as India has the BRICS presidency this year, which will allow for many more possibilities this year for India and Brazil to talk to each other, to bring their agenda to the center stage of global governance frameworks. But I think IPSA also is an important platform where three democracies, India, Brazil, and South Africa, converge in significant ways. And I do think that in so many ways, we started by talking about strategic autonomy, to multi-alignment, to multipolarity, to multilateralism. All of that, are embedded in the way foreign policy visions of the two nations are articulated. And I think that is the vision that the two nations should be taking forward through these many multilateral platforms that are available to them and that are becoming increasingly more potent as the UN system is crumbling and as the UN system is being trampled upon by the major powers.
Professor Pant, pleasure as always to talk to you. Thank you for your time and sharing your perspectives with our viewers at home and abroad. Appreciate it.